went up an octave. Isn't you either, sister? So you vanish, okay? Zone, he's a close personal friend of mine.
It's a world it's a world where there aren't families. It's, you know, it's the world of a young person going out into the wilderness of cities and sort of, in a way, creating a family. It's very, you know, it's kind of like, it's not that it's a goth book, but it's kind of out of the same stuff that makes kids be goths.
I think of Neuromancer. It's kind of a rock and roll book. It's got everything. It's got the sex, it's got the drugs, it's got the sense of alienation. In that sense, it is truly rock and roll.
As Case was picking up his beer, one of those strange instants of silence descended, as though 100 unrelated conversations had simultaneously arrived at the same pause. Then the whore's giggle rang out, tinged with a certain hysteria. Rats grunted. An angel passed. The Chinese, bellowed a drunken Australian. Chinese bloody invented nerve splicing. Give me the mainland for a nerve job any day. Fix you right, mate. Now that, Case said to his glass, all his bitterness suddenly rising in him like bile, that is so much bullshit.
It owes a lot of its effectiveness as an experience to the fact that I didn't know what I was doing. It's a first novel, and I just had to put one foot after another. I was just terrified, actually, by it. It was very scary. I think the disappointment that I sometimes sense in younger readers who find Neuromancer and really, really like it, and then find my later work, and they're like, whoa, why can't you please do more like this? And I have to say, well, I just can't, you know? I don't have access to that material now, and if I did, I would probably be in grave trouble. It just wouldn't be natural. It wouldn't be natural. It'd be, you know, it'd be bad news if that's where I was. In a way, it was, I think it was, personally, it was kind of bad news at the time that I was where I was then at that age. Initially, I had a lot of reluctance toward going for it, and I think that I still had that reluctance up until I met Bruce Sterling and was introduced through Bruce to some other writers who were trying to do something similar. And just having company, you know, a little fellowship went a long way.
When Louis Shiner and I, who were part of the Turkey City group here in Austin, were first reading Gibson's work in manuscript, and we looked at it and said, look, you know, this is breakthrough material here. This guy's really doing something different. It's like we got to put down our preconceptions and pick up on this guy from Vancouver. It's the way forward. A hole had opened up in consensus reality. I mean, we just like saw daylight.
When I was writing Burning Chrome, the short story that you know, where the word cyberspace first appeared, I knew as soon as I had the opening scene that I actually had a completely original piece.
In the early days when he used to send me short stories, I would send them around to people and I would give them copies of you know, Omni that had his stories in them and send them to people and sort of seek out their response, and people were just genuinely baffled.
You know, I sat there thinking, nobody's ever done this.
I mean, they literally could not parse the guy's paragraphs. They could not make sense. You know, it's like what is it? What is it? You know, they didn't understand concepts like cyberspace, for instance, that there was a simulated space which was inside the computer. I mean, they literally could not get their heads around that concept. I mean, what was the problem? Are they hallucinating? Is it a real space? I mean, these just the sort of, just imaginative tropes which he was inventing and deploying were just beyond people's grasp.
I met Bruce Sterling at a science fiction convention in Denver in the fall of 1981 and read Burning Chrome, the first cyberspace short story, to an audience of 4 people. Sterling, his wife, a friend of mine, and some baffled stranger. And it was like the most fun I think I ever had reading anything, because Bruce completely got it.
We were aware that computers were a bigger social revolution in the making than space flight was ever going to be, or that robots ever had been.
No one seemed to have noticed that there was a territory there.
Yeah, when we were first hanging out with computer geeks, yeah, it was not something you spoke about in public. I mean, really, if you went to a party and started talking about your Apple II, people would walk off diagonally. We turned out to be great glamorizers. We were able to make computers glamorous. And of course, we weren't the only ones. I mean, once people caught on that that was possible, you had Madison Avenue move into the job. AT&T hires people to tell people that now. It's, it's become a very mainstream message.
I had a hunch that it was going to change things in the way that the advent of the ubiquity of the automobile changed things. It changed how we dress, how we eat. These things affect everything.
I mean, this was a supermodel among technologies. It was just a matter of spraying on this hairspray and slapping on some lip gloss, and this thing was going to walk. They were going to be cute, they were going to be miniature, they would be designed, they would be adorable, that the boundaries of the human body would be crossed.
What made you choose science fiction rather than some other form of fiction?
Well, it was my native literary culture. And it was what I had grown up on. I saw it as a viable but essentially derelict form of popular art. And I thought that was a remarkable thing. I probably started looking at what was being done then in science fiction in around 1976 or 77. I saw an opening, I thought, I can fill the gap here. Maybe I can do something. Maybe I can do something with this. That was the conscious part of it. The unconscious part of it, I don't know. I know that it seemed a weird and pathetic thing to try to do.
Were you still a student when you first got published?
Yeah, I figured out that I could make a living or augment my living by being a student, which was possible in Canada at that time. If you could maintain a high enough grade point average, they were very generous. They'd give you loans and then forgive them. And, in fact, I wasn't even really studying. I was just maintaining a grade point average of reading books.
You came to Canada to dodge the draft, didn't you?
Well, I had a peculiar experience with that. I had gone in and basically told them the truth. I told them that my one ambition in life was to take every mind-altering substance that existed on the face of the planet, and I just went in and babbled about wanting to be like William Burroughs. And that seemed to do the trick. That and the fact that I promptly, within a week or two, exited the country for several years. You know, I was very, very lucky in the timing of that, because if I had turned out